Hi, I'm Dan, and today at Flarespace we are going to be installing a bed panel kit onto this 148 Transit. It's a little bit different on this one because we already have the flares, trim rings, and a little bit of a wall panel kit in this van. It came to us this way from a customer, but it shouldn't be too much trouble to back up one step and go ahead and get all of the bed panels installed on this today. Okay, so the first thing we did was went ahead and took off the wall panel and the trim ring. That would just gives us access to everything we need to get to here. The first thing after that we're going to do is put this bed metal onto the wall itself. This is the support for the actual bed rail. Things to note is that this top piece right here, this return flange, is going to go back towards the flare or towards the outside of the vehicle. And on a 148, which this one is, it's going to have a little extended piece right here that goes up and above this little bump out. On the back, you don't have this, so that'll orientate this or orient that piece of metal against here. So another thing to note on this bed metal here is the top flange is going to land just underneath our trim ring and where it was. You can actually see on this van where this was exactly on the van. We want to make sure that we're just underneath that. So you may want to mount your trim ring, hang it, maybe put a mark on the wall here when you're going to do this. But that's going to set our bed height because we're going to use our trim ring as the remainder of the bed for these bed systems. And with that, I went ahead and actually marked on this, put a piece of tape down and marked where I want this to be. Your height is going to vary based on your floor and everything else. So just go ahead and take all that into account. But we're using our flare, or our trim ring rather, as the bed height determination for this piece of bed metal. So with that, we'll go ahead and hang this thing up there. All right, I've gone ahead and hung these pieces of bed metal up temporarily. I did it with just some sheet metal screws here, some self-tapping ones. You do not have to do that by any means. I just did that for the purposes of this video and making it a little easier on myself to try to do multiple things and hold things at the same time. But in your hardware kit, you're going to get a drill bit and you're going to get a bunch of rivets like this. You are going to need to get a rivet gun as well, and I'll show you how to use those. But what we're going to do is locate where we're going to want 6 rivets on this side, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side there. We'll just go ahead and drill those holes out, and we'll start putting in these rivets that will actually hold this all together. Right now, it kind of has a rattling to it. Once we get it all stable and everything's riveted in, it will not rattle any longer. So without any kind of further delays, we'll go ahead and get into this. All right, so once you've got your holes drilled in the sheet metal that we're giving you and then the body metal itself, you're going to take your pop rivet and then you're going to put it in your pop rivet gun. They have multiple sizes for these ends here, so just get the one that matches on that one. Put it in there all the way, put it down in the hole, and then you're going to squeeze this, and then every time you reset, push it back in to make sure this is always tight between here. So every time, just keep squeezing. And one of these times, it'll pop off like that. And then the little piece that you're pulling on, it pops off of there and then leaves that expanded in there, and then will no longer rattle anymore. So that's how these all get installed. Okay, so we've gone ahead and mounted all of the bed metal underneath all the wall panels. This one's already got its trim ring and wall panel on, but I did want to call out a few things, namely that I've got where I put all my rivets here. I've got 2 on the ends, 2 across the bottom piece in the middle to support things, and then 2 on this end as well. That keeps it nice and strong in kind of every direction this way, but also coming back and forth. That's what this big kind of roll over the top is to keep this thing very stiff. Like we said before, we want this piece to be under where our trim ring is going to sit. And then this bottom piece, I did not add this, but I should tell you now, we want to make sure that it is connecting or touching this bottom piece as well. Again, that keeps it from racking and moving around. With that, we're pretty good to go. We'll go ahead and put the wall panel on. Just a note in this video, These screws are not something that we normally supply with our kits. This is something that this particular customer had, and since this van came to us with the trim rings and wall panel installed already, that's what we're going to be using here. So just to kind of clarify anything here. All right, so now that we've got the panel back on, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start installing these rails. I've already done this one, obviously, but I wanted to point out a few things to you to kind of make everything a little easier. So the goal here is that once the panel is sitting on this surface, it's going to be even with this interior area right here. The next one you're going to want to do is make sure that these pieces here, these cutouts, are on the way down, are facing down, because we're going to clamp to this edge and to this edge here. So that will make up that portion. Other than that, the way we're going to do this is by drilling out each of these locations, all 8 of those. I find it easiest to use a smaller bit, like an 1/8 inch drill bit or something like that, before we step to the final size, which was the same drill bit we used earlier. Then we'll just run these 4 screws in on the top and the 4 on the bottom, and then we're pretty much good to go. So we'll start that on the other side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down just about 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch here on both sides. This is going to give me the right offset for the bed panel thickness itself. The rail height is a little bit shorter than the actual bed panel is, so this is going to represent the top of my bed rail. And then once everything's actually installed at the end, the bed panel will sit nice and easy and flush with this. So I'm going to take this guy and put him up here. And then I will go ahead and mark my 2 center holes, and then we'll start drilling. Get that right on my line. And if you're not perfect here, it doesn't matter all that much, because your mattress thickness will make up any difference that you have here. You know, as long as you're not over an inch or something off, that little bit of variation that you might have is going to be taken up by the mattress. So no worries on that. All right, I will start drilling these 2 holes, and that will serve to hold everything in place while I finish out the rest of it. Okay, on these last 2, it's sometimes hard to drill through them, and that's because these transits have a very special steel, which is very difficult to go through and drill through. My best advice is use a smaller drill bit first, something like an 1/8 inch drill bit, maybe a slightly larger one. Take your time and go through it. If you overheat the metal, it tends to get harder, and it's harder to get through at that point. So take your time, go kind of at a moderate pace. Don't just spin the drill bit really, really fast, and then use that smaller drill bit and then step over to the larger one. So with that, we'll get through this. All right, now that we've drilled out these 2 with the smaller drill bit already, we'll step up to the final size drill bit that we gave you, and we will finish these 2 holes before we finish out putting all the screws in. So one of the things you're going to notice as you go to install all these is some of our rails in the past that we've had are countersunk here, and some of them are not. So these right here are flush here. So we'll include these little kind of washers that are countersunk on the inside and then flat on the back, so that when you use these countersunk bolts, they'll go down inside of there, sit nice and flush, and then when you install them, they'll have a nice finished look to them. So just be mindful of that. If these are countersunk, so they're kind of have a dish to them, they go down inside of the angle on these holes, then you won't need to use these little washers because it'll match the head. But if they're like these and they're flush, then you'll use these little washers here. With the bed rails installed now, we're going to move over to the bed system. This customer is using a wood bed system now. I'll show you how that works and how the clamps work themselves. This is the clamp system that you'll get. It'll probably assembled something like this. We're going to go ahead and unscrew this carriage bolt out of the assembly, and then we'll pass the carriage bolt through this hole. One thing to note is the spikes on this little nut right here, this is called a torque washer, are going to dig into the wood, and then the head here, which is square, is going to mate with the square hole, there so that this piece will be locked in place once it's all through. So with that, we'll put this in here, just like that, and we'll spin this around so you can see the back side. When this goes on, we're going to put the carriage bolt through the hole in this top piece, and then we're going to align this slot here with the bolt itself, and that will allow us to actually put everything together. And sometimes it takes a little bit of wiggling, but let's see. That's got it right there. So once this is tightened down and we're using everything in place, when this actuates up, it's going to tighten everything up. And then on this side, this is going to hold everything on the bottom tight. So we're going to do this with both sides of the panels. One thing to note for the other panel, here and here, there's 2 holes. We're only going to use one, but we did this so that it's symmetrical. The back panel, which we just did, has the cutouts in the back. This one, you can use either hole, but you're going to need to use whichever one lines up with the slot up front there. So again, you're going to use either this one on the front ones on the top and bottom, or the back ones on the top and bottom. It just depends on which one is the correct one for you as you spin your panel. Once your panel is in place, you're going to get this thing so it's fairly tight. So it's tight. When this tightens up, this part here is getting caught by this. So it's got in the right spot now. So slide that in there, and then just simply push up like that, and it'll, once it over centers, it locks, and that's not going anywhere. And with that, we have the bed in. We clamped our panels down on the bottom side. We threw this mattress in. It is a kind of a 4-piece mattress, but the center section is zipped together, so it'll actually flip toward you guys to open up this whole middle space. That middle, or that front mattress or bed panel can also come out and be slid to the back side as well and latch down back there. And then you have the 2 side panels filling the rest in, and that is the Flarespace bed.